Welcome to Huddle Up with Matias Bueno. Today, we have a very special guest from the Dustin Nielsen Show, the co-host and producer, Lieutenant Eric, otherwise known as Eric Holtz by his government name, a very lively fellow that has lots of charisma when it comes to, you think about on-air sports talent in Northern Alberta. There's not many that do it better than the folks that work at TSN 1260. You got a lot of good guys going on there. And Eric, I'm really happy to have you on the show today.
I'm going to cry here. Thanks for having me. It's really nice and kind of you to say. Thanks, Ed.
Are you a big fan of the movie? I think it's Castaway with Tom Hanks.
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it once, maybe twice. With the volleyball, right, or whatever it is. Yeah. Why?
Well said.
Is there a particular theme that you're on here that you would ask?
Oh, I mean,
can't be the looks, can it?
I was just wondering if they had casted you as the stunt double for Tom Hanks.
I'd do it. As long as there's money involved, I'll do it, man. That's fine by me. No, it's we might as well. Like, are you like this whole thing? The hair and the beard. And the lieutenant name. It's Lieutenant Dan from the Forrest Gump movie. That's exactly where that came from. So, kind of you're close. You have the actor, just different movie.
When I first did see the Lieutenant Eric, I thought this has to be from Forrest Gump. And then seeing the old post on Facebook, 5 years ago today, that Lieutenant Eric was born. What was the specific moment or instance in which they decided that you were going to get that nickname?
Yeah, so I had an army jacket that I used to wear in the studio, and then I had hair. And, one day I was sitting in a chair, kind of cross-legged. I had my legs up. I don't know why. It's a very uncomfortable way to sit. I couldn't do that now, but my knees looked like I had no legs, obviously. And Dustin comes in the room, I spin the chair around. I don't know who spun the chair around. Spin the chair around, and here I am with no legs and an army jacket and the hair and Lieutenant Dan, and then that's took off from there. So it's one of those things you don't really want to give yourself a nickname, but if it's bestowed upon you in a certain moment or situation, then you ride with it and roll with it. And, it's a lot more exciting than just Eric Holt, So it's got a little something. It's got a little story to it. So it's a little pizzazz.
And also too on radio, people like memorable names or nicknames, and ones that sound generic or difficult to pronounce are usually not sticking with the crowd. Whereas when they hear a nickname, it sparks all sorts of interest.
It raises the eyebrows a bit. You're right. And that's kind of the whole point to what you do. It is like wrestling. It's a bit of sports, but it's also entertainment. So you got to be on that side of it as well. So yeah, it's would have never guessed that movie and that particular character and scene would have played such an important role in my life, but here we are.
What would you say are some of your favorite movies ever?
Wow. I'm kind of off the grid. Like, I don't know if you've seen Coffee and Cigarettes, that movie. What are some Coffee and Cigarettes is like one of my favorites. I mean, Jurassic Park's always nice. That's a thing when you're a kid. I was a big Star Wars fan growing up, that type of thing. Coffee and Cigarettes is the one that comes to mind. If I can recommend any movie to watch Coffee and Cigarettes. Star-studded cast. It's amazing.
Who's got top billing, and who are the main cast?
You got, so it's like a movie. It's all shot in black and white. It's just a bunch of like famous people getting together for chats over coffee and cigarettes. So you got like Iggy Pop and Tom Waits talking over coffee and cigarettes. You got the guy from White Stripes. I can't remember their names right now. They're in it. Some other like lesser known. I think it's like an 80s or 90s film. But it's got some weird people that you wouldn't really expect to be together. And they just talk over coffee and cigarettes. It's a pretty interesting. It's got a lot of laughs to it and a lot of weirdness to it.
Are you a big TV guy as well, or not really?
Yeah, the wife and I watch a lot of the, I grew up on The Simpsons and that type, like Fresh Prince and all that, like, type of TV, but now it's all streaming and whatnot. Game of Thrones stuff, all that, stuff like that. Whatever's hot series, we'll just pick up and watch and crush, how you do.
And growing up, you're a Saskatoon boy originally, so I'm sure the Riders and football takes precedence in your life. But would you say it's the only sport that you really strongly followed, or what other ones would come after that?
Yeah, growing up football mad, like that's the whole thing. Played football, got hurt playing football, so I had to stop playing football, which sucked. But no shortage of football between the Hilltops and the Huskies, and those teams were always having success when I was younger. And then driving down from Saskatoon to Regina for Rough Rider games was just a hoot when you were in your teens and 20s and stuff. So that was fun. But I'm a big soccer fan, football too, the other football. I'm a big Liverpool supporter. You got FC Edmonton out here, which I've been supporting. I moved here when FC Edmonton became a thing, so we're kind of brethren in that regard, and I've kind of grew up with them here. So you always got to support your local club. They've fallen on some rough times, but hopefully they can get their act together. I think there was talk of a Saskatoon team or something now, but love soccer, love the beautiful game, Canada men's national team, women's national team, like World Cups, Euros, Champions League, all that stuff. Love it. Can't get enough of it. And I think it's because you don't get so much of it here. You got to look for it. I think there's so much stuff that's like beamed into our psyche all the time that I feel like I need to go out and get something new. And that's where I kind of found soccer and football. Even growing up, we played it a lot. So it was always kind of on our minds, but it was never there that you could touch. So to me, I like going out, especially with Twitter and stuff. Now before you didn't know what was going on, now you can find out what's happening with clubs pretty instantaneously. So that helps, and easier to follow and cover, I guess, if you wanted to do that as well.
Where did that initial influence to follow soccer come from then? Was it a parent or was it with some friends?
Like most people in Canada, like you're not like we had relatives that just moved here, my grandparents and stuff. So we're not, a couple generations. So you got a lot of we'd watch, growing up, I'd watch West Germany and World Cups, and then when Germany, and my mom's Ukrainian, Romanian, so you kind of, all those countries that you're from, you kind of follow, and you latch onto those players and stuff. And again, I played a lot when I was younger, not serious, right? It's just that five-a-side stuff. So, but you get to an age, and then you're like, and then you find out, the 11-a-side, how real it is. And again, I just think the connection to heritage and stuff always kind of helped. I was never a Canadian fan because their programs weren't that great at the time, but now they are, and it's great. It's great to watch. I mean, those games here, past qualifying window in the fall there, did we have a good time? And I think I saw Herdman on the bus. We watched the bus pulled up, and my buddy and I, we were there, and Herdman was just looking at us straight in the eyes and banging his chest. It was quite the moment, that qualifying window. So I think a lot of more people will, as I said, I kind of came about it luckily with my family, and how, you just watch an international tournament here or there. I think now what you're seeing with this national team, and women's as well, I mean, they did some outstanding stuff, the screw job in London and all that. But I think they got a lot of people to they captured a lot of imaginations. And now with Herdman and the men, they're kind of building off that as well. And it's a great symbiotic relationship between the two. And it's nice to see, because I think the nation as a whole, it's a lot more melting pot, shall we say. And the faces and the people I saw at those qualifiers was just amazing, because it's just different people from all sorts of walks of life coming together for one specific thing. And that's the beauty of it all. If these teams can keep succeeding, I think you can go a long way in this country with just bridging gaps with certain types of people and everything. So it's great. Yeah. I hope long may they continue, and hopefully this World Cup for them, provides a bit of another step to that.
You were obviously very young at the time, but do you remember anything of Canada's first run at the World Cup in '86?
No, it wasn't anything spoken of, in our family circles or anything. As I said, it was mostly where are you from? And you kind of followed that country a bit. But yeah, I can't speak on any of that. And it seemed like it would have been a nice time, but I just find, looking back too, this seems like a different kettle of fish. Fonzie playing for Bayern Munich, and some of those other guys like Eustáquio and the success in Belgium and the Portuguese league that they're having is just, we've never seen this before. It's pretty insane. So yeah, I can't comment on that time, but I would for sure probably wager that this has got a little more spice and oomph to the whole process.
And when you think about the original versions of Alphonso Davies, that would have been back in the early 2000s. Jimmy Brennan and why is his name slipping my mind? Paul Stalteri. That's it. Paul Stalteri was the first, those two guys were the first two guys to ever play in the Bundesliga as Canadians ever. And then when Paul Stalteri was on Werder Bremen, when they won the Bundesliga, he was the first ever Canadian to be on a Bundesliga winning team, which is crazy. And I don't know how many fans, maybe there's hardcore fans that know that, but Alphonso Davies has obviously thrown Canada onto center stage, but
superstar.
There were some that came before who walked so that he could run, and it's great to see him carrying the torch.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. No, I mean there have been Canadian guys in the past that have played at a high level, but like this is like Tajon Buchanan is electric. Like and Eustachio, like the way he can command a midfield. It's great to see. Like, it's just so great to see when you've been watching these tournaments for years and years and years. Now you see these guys popping up right near the top of some of these games, like Jonathan David, what he did with was it Lille? What was it? A couple years, last year, a couple years back. But yeah, it's great stuff, man. Just totally great.
You're obviously, when it comes to following the CFL, growing up cheering for the Riders, working in radio, does that, I guess maybe not being a fan, quote unquote, but that Rider fandom, how does that influence your love of the CFL, or at least appreciation for it now living in Edmonton?
Yeah, it's funny. I get asked that quite a bit. I see myself as somewhat of a, it's kind of corny, but a steward of the league. I think if you, coming here, and this team used to be like, we hated it because they won all the time. In my dad's age, they'd win all the time. Our rivalry was mainly with Stampeders growing up and some of those teams. But yeah, Edmonton's got a place in Saskatchewanite mind and heart that's not the most favored. But ever since I moved here, the club, I guess, has fallen on hard times, you could say. But they haven't had a lot of them in their history. So that's, being a Rough Rider supporter for my life, I can tell you a little bit about hard times. The good times are they're once a blue moon. So it's too bad right now that Edmonton is kind of going through what they're going through, but everybody goes through it. And since I moved here, and since I've had the opportunity to attend a few Grey Cups out here in the prairies, both Edmonton, Calgary, and what we were hoping was Saskatchewan before the pandemic hit, we're going to try to get out there this fall. But they were my first Grey Cups I went to, and that stuck it for me. I mean, I used to, growing up, you grow up anywhere. You grow up in Edmonton, you're an Oilers fan, so you see the world through blue and orange lenses, and everybody's against you, and that's natural. Every fan does that. But when you go somewhere else and you visit somewhere else and you live, you're like, oh, okay, well, your team's only as good as the league in it. So you kind of gotta, much like Oilers fans too. We can make fun of the Arizonas, but you need markets too. You need people to succeed. And much like the CFL right now, where some markets are fledgling, and so you need to do your part. And I'm a fan of the league now, is I guess what I'm trying to say. And I love the Rough Riders, always will. It's where I'm from. I'm not going to lie about that or deny it. I think that would be kind of a disservice. But I also, being a fan of something, I think levels you to critique it. I don't blindly cheer for them and support them. I let them know what I don't think is working, and I'm not afraid to say it. I don't really care there, but I just think I like the league, and I like to see all these teams do well. I was out at the Elks last night, Elks Stamps. They do a great job tailgating. It's just a party central atmosphere, Spirit of Edmonton, Jerry Graxy, to name a few out there. But it's just, I think you don't know what you have till it's gone. And Canadian football and the party that surrounds that is something unique. We used to have, Canadian music was popular, Canadian TVs, and all that stuff is kind of going away because we're so Americanized by the minute. And it's fine to watch the NFL and all the big leagues, and that's good with money. But these types of leagues and this type of fun where you don't need 5 lanyards and a velvet rope separating you from guys. I mean, they're making the same money as us. We're all on the same page. So it's the workman's league, workwoman's league. You can kind of reach out and touch your heroes. And you don't realize how fun and important these things are until they're gone. And that's kind of what I think about the CFL. I think it's important for, if you like the league, even if you like a team, to kind of do your best in supporting it. Because again, going to those Grey Cups, I kind of figured out, hey, you know what? Once the game is on, we can all hate each other and say whatever you want. I was at Labor Day in Regina a couple of weeks back, fight with Bombers fans, fight with Riders fans too. Like, it's a high intensity, but that's during the game. Game's over, go out for a beer and have a good time, sing a song or two. So that's what I learned at Grey Cups. And it's just, that's Canadiana. World's kind of partisan right now. Everybody wants to fight each other for everything. But I think those Grey Cups really showed me that I don't care what team you support or whatever, you can always come together and have a good time. And I think that's what Canadians do best, and exemplified and really brought to the front in Grey Cups and with Canadian football. That's love the league, love the zaniness, because that's us, right? We shouldn't try to be Americans because we're not. They can dress up a 9-3 football game like it's, a big Hollywood movie, and here you could have a gunslinging showdown in the CFL, and people are like, yeah, but it could have been, whatever. Yeah, it's Canadian. Support it. That's all I gotta say. I get fired up about that. Hot topic for me.
100%. You mentioned going to Grey Cups and getting that first experience. It's something that's unlike any other, because you don't even realize, like, there's people. It's not like in this. I think the Super Bowl is maybe similar in a way, but obviously you only want to go to a big game for most fans if your team is playing in it. Mm-hmm. But you look at the Grey Cup, there's fans of people from all over. There's BC Lions fans, Montreal, people from Toronto, Hamilton. Obviously, you're always going to find fans of the teams playing in the games, and sometimes less depending on how far away it is from each of the cities. But seeing everybody come together and gather and celebrate a historic institution in this country is always a beautiful thing. And I think when you look at, for example, in 2019, that was the last time that the Grey Cup was held, and everyone was there before COVID hit. They had to alter it to go to Hamilton and kind of bump it off the rails before finally coming back for this year. It was a great celebration being in that atmosphere and seeing fans, especially for myself, that first time that I was like, hey, there's someone in a Lions jersey or an Alouettes, or someone cheering for the Argos, or people here who cheer for the Stamps, who are expecting their team to be in it. But seeing everyone come together like a big family, and, like having that argy-bargy and that fighting environment, but then eventually when the game's over, just realizing like we were there to support the league. I totally agree with that sentiment that you have. You have.
Like the football to me, and it's secondary. Like I love to party, and everybody that goes to those things just love to party. And that's kind of like when I was, I moved here in 2010, and the Rough Riders were playing Montreal in the Grey Cup here in 2010. So I was like, sweet, I just moved here. My buddy's coming up from Regina, bringing a bunch of people. We're going to watch the Riders beat the Alouettes. Finally, it was after that Too Many Men in 09. So we're like, well, we're going to get a revenge, and I'm living here, and this is going to be great. So my buddy comes up, and it is freezing cold that day. We were waiting for a cab on 118th here, and some guys pulled over and gave us a lift in their van. So we just like hopped in. So that was cool. Get to the game. The game didn't turn out in our favor. So we're sitting in Commonwealth. It's just freezing cold afterward. And we're sitting there with the press trying to cry, but it's too cold to cry. And then some Stamps fan comes up to us. And again, at this point, like I just moved here. I was still kind of, fresh in my green and white blinder and hated the Stamps and hated it. Stamps guy walks up to me and my buddy, and he hands us this 2-liter of just home brew. I don't know what the hell was in it. And he goes, boys, you're going to need this more than I do. And he gives it to us, and we took swigs out of that. I don't know what was in there, but it
swish.
I have no idea, but it made me feel better. So that's, and I just, at that moment, a Stamps fan coming up to me and my buddy in green and white and going, you know what, boys, tough one today. That to me was, it was one of those things where for me, the tide kind of turned, and as you say, going to a Grey Cup and hanging out with a Lions fan and talking to her for 2 hours or something, and figuring out her life, or seeing like Kari Jones at a donair shop at 2 a.m. or, those are things you don't get in the NFL. And it's a unique thing to Canada that you can just kind of, we're all mishmashing in this party. Yeah. I can't remember the word you used there, but an argy-bargy. That's exactly it. Exactly it. Yeah.
So you said that 2019 or 2018 was the first, or no, it was 2010 was the first Grey Cup you went to?
I was here. I didn't because it was here, so I didn't go anywhere necessarily. I was here. I went to the game. It was the only Grey Cup game I've ever been to. I went in when it was here in Edmonton in 2018. I just went to the party stuff, didn't go to the game. But the partying was electric downtown. They had it all set up. It was just my brother's band played. We had a good weather, was really good too. And then in Calgary, again, same thing. Went to party, didn't bring any clothes. I just wore what was on my back. Stayed there for 3 days. Me and Dusty went down. I didn't have anything, and that was fun. Didn't stay for the game again. And then Regina this year, if I do go, probably much of the same. It's too hard, that game on a Sunday, then working we all want to do it, and then nobody is at the stage. But yeah, definitely, like for me, it's kind of, but the football secondary, it's just the partying is so much fun. All those organizers do such, they're all such great hosts, and they all know how to throw a ripper.
That is an unfortunate element about the Grey Cup. And I guess that also is similar to the Super Bowl, where you have it on Sunday night and it's like,
Uh,
but what about people that traveled out there? It's like, you got to get to work the next day unless you like
you
book
gotta
work
book
off the
all that.
next day.
Yeah, you gotta Labor Day too, because Labor Day game was a Sunday, so we had the Monday off. I booked the Tuesday, my brother, because I was like, there's no way I'm racing back with no voice to. You got to give your. Usually it was booking time off before the weekend. Now you got to book that time off after the weekend, right, to kind of recover and dry out a bit.
Yeah, fortunately for Labor Day, at least, between Winnipeg and Regina is not very far for my friends
Right.
and people that came
Right.
out. But yeah, for the Grey Cup, you definitely got to fly by night. That's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
How many other different major four sporting events have you been to in your life?
Oh, not many. I like following sports, but I don't need to get there live. I've been to a few Oilers games in the old barn and the new one. Went to Seattle for a Mariners game this past spring for my honeymoon, playing the Phillies. Got to see Bryce Harper. I think he had a grand slam, but I was in the concourse buying a beer. I missed it. But that was okay. And that was before their run. Like there was nobody there. Now they're selling out every night. So that was kind of neat. Other than that, though, man, I'd prefer. I know this summer I try to make an effort to get out to as many. We got the Edmonton Riverhawks in the West Coast League, just kind of a summer league for collegiate guys down south. A lot of Arizona State, West Coast guys coming up here to play ball. We're going to break ball diamond here. CEBL, you guys got the Rattlers, we got the Stingers. I got a nice court here out at the exhibition grounds, so I'd go out there and watch some games. I like the local stuff, man. I love the Prairie Junior and youth sport football here. Like this is a great time for, and the hockey too. You got Golden Bears here. I was always a big Husky hockey fan growing up. They were always the bridesmaid, never the bride, but that's okay. But yeah, to me, like the cost for like big name events, I just can't justify kind of planning and going to. I'd watch it at home. To me, I like walking to like local events around in and around town and scoping the scene and having a hot dog and mixing it up with the locals. But yeah, that Mariners game though, that was something. That T-Mobile Park is quite the gem down there in Seattle. I really had a good time there. Other than that though, yeah, just a few Oilers games and try to get out to Commonwealth and party it up and the ballparks and the basketball courts and that type of thing.
What are some of your favorite memories then from watching local sports?
Ooh, so the U of S Huskies used to have big rivalries with Laval football back in, I don't know, the early
2000s.
Yeah, and boy, oh boy, we'd like I don't know what game it would have been, Hardy Cup, something like that. It was one of those like semifinals or quarterfinals, and Laval was in Saskatoon, and they had that whole Griffith Stadium around the track was lined with people, and they had a little rope, separating like 5 drunk college students deep all around the track, and that game was to the wire. And what was the result again? I think Laval was going for a 2-point conversion to win it, and we were in the north end zone, and they flubbed it. I don't recall. But once that was done, those ropes went down and students just rushed the field as you do. And the Laval players were, and my buddy and I were up next to the coach, and there was spitting going on, arms were flying. It was just crazy. But I know that stuff doesn't fly anymore, but I like that about sports. Like I like the soccer too, like the hooliganism. I don't like people getting hurt and stuff, but I like the energy of that when it comes to being a fan and not just like sitting there and do something, and wanting to be entertained, but actually being a part of it, being a part of the team. I like that stuff. I mean, Taylor Field too. Sitting in those section 27, 28, those college zones where people just stood the whole game in the bench seating, and you could always fit one more person in, and shirts were off. And man, the debauchery that we got up to in that zone was just, it was crazy. Kiwanis Jones one day after the game came by and jumped in the hot tub. I mean, a lot of stuff that I don't really want to repeat because I don't want to get in trouble. But like, yeah, it's different now to watch sports. I think to attend a sporting event, I think when you wanted back in the day, you would go. If you wanted to watch a game peacefully, you'd stay at home, watch it on TV. And if you wanted to be rowdy, you'd go to the game. Now, if you want to be rowdy, you stay at home. And it seems like they want people who are, quiet and, I have my seat and my cup holder and I'm good and sit down and please be. And that's kind of they want more of a customer. And it's a money-making thing right now, more so than ever. But Yeah, give me the days where even the Coliseum, I think too, where it comes to like the hockey rink here is fantastic. State of the art building, don't get me wrong. I've seen a lot of great concerts in it too, but you just feel too comfortable, you know?
Yeah.
Give me a concrete slab and just a bench seating so I don't want to sit. And away we go. But yeah, most of the stories we can DM afterwards and I'll give you the real deal.
I remember looking back and watching some old CFL highlights over the span of COVID, and even up until now, trying to learn the history of previous games and rivalries that happened in the CFL before I was born. I mean, I was only born 96, so not a lot of history that I've witnessed, even during the time that I was alive as a little kid. And I remember hearing a story on one of the first episodes of my podcast 2 years ago that I went back to watch the highlights of the 1993 East Final between Winnipeg and Hamilton at Canada, or before it had the sponsor name, Winnipeg Stadium. Sammy Garza leading the Bombers at quarterback, Cal Murphy towards the end of his career as a head coach, and the Bombers had smashed Hamilton by 45 plus in both their two previous meetings. And then Hamilton came out to play. It was a tight game. The Bombers drive it down. Westwood splits the uprights, and then Paul Osbaldiston gets in range, but not close enough. Short from, I think it was 45 into a hurricane of wind by like 5 yards. And the second, I think it was Jared Wilcox who caught the missed field goal. Boom. The stands empty and everybody at Winnipeg Stadium floods onto the field. Cal Murphy's doing a post-game interview with Scott Oak, and there's fans literally right around his shoulders, screaming and up in his face as if you just watched Appalachian State beat Michigan, that kind of stuff. And Brett McNeil was the guest who told me about that story. He was an offensive lineman for the Bombers in that season. They, went on to lose the Grey Cup to Edmonton and Calgary the next week, but he was saying is like that time is like you'll never see that again. But it was an exciting time at Winnipeg Stadium, and just hearing you tell the stories of running onto the field and the college football atmosphere is just, it's so infectious. And that's one thing that I'm looking forward to at least doing once in my life, going to a college game in America, because you can't do that really here. And people flooding the field and going crazy over an upset or even just a rivalry. I did that once in high school when my school won their first ever provincial basketball title in the modern era, more than 60 years. When my brother, we ran on the court, and it was, even though it's just high school basketball, there was nothing quite like it.
Oh, that means, listen, it's levels are one thing, but you're right. We had some high school buzzer beaters and last second field goals, and the parties that ensued afterwards were great. But you mentioned that's college football flavor. That's that whole, your student body is part of the team, and you're all one, and if something happens, you want to go out there and celebrate. I'm not trying to encourage people to break rules. I know stadiums have legalities they need to follow, and that's the reality of the current day. But you're right, that type of stuff, you don't get it too much anymore. But if you can ever be a part of it or have an opportunity to kind of jump in and wade in, it can't be beat. It really, that adrenaline rush off that type of stuff, bottle it and sell it, you'd be a billionaire.
And speaking of upsets, I know the other day in college football, seeing Marshall knock off Notre Dame, and then Appalachian State knock off Texas A&M, and I think even Kentucky beat Florida.
Texas was close.
Texas was close, and that's without Ewers. Like, I've never felt allegiance to a college team, but I think the thing that I've grown a little bit more appreciation for is kind of rooting for the upsets, because like you said, like that high you get from seeing the fans storm the field is more satisfying than seeing the Alabama win for the 80th time in the last 20 years.
Oh, that's just it. And I like you watch the college ball for the upsets. I like the big game. I like seeing the stadiums and how each one is a little unique. It's not so uniformity. The NFL sometimes seems a little cold and corporate to me. I know their stadiums are a little different too than every one, but college has that tradition. The hedges in Georgia. My brother's a Washington Husky fan. He went there for a game a few years back, fell in love. They do this thing that before the game, they're all on boats, just how it's all centered there and the infrastructure there. So a lot of people will boat. There's like a flotilla pregame, and he fell in love. So he's a Washington Husky guy now. I've never gotten a chance to go to any college experience, but I wouldn't mind going and kind of trying to pick a team. But it's the same with Liverpool. Like Liverpool to me, the club, what they stand for. I got a privilege to visit the city once. Like the Rough Riders for me, it's a family. You're born into a family. They may be annoying, that you may hate them at times, but you always love them because they're your family. It's where you're from. Then you get a little older and then you fall in love. You figure out who you are as an individual, what your likes and commitments are and what you believe in. And then you go out there in the landscape and you say, this club or this college or this team, that really speaks to me. And then you dig a little deeper and say, Jesus is really, I feel, and you fall in love with something because you are now an individual. You've grown up and you love what you were born into. That'll never change. Although the Rough Riders, piss me off sometimes with what they do, or whatever. But that's that family love. But growing up and kind of finding either whether it's a college team or something that really speaks to you and what you hold dear, that's pretty cool if you can find that. Some people can't, some people don't. But I think with me and Liverpool, and my brother as well with Washington, like he always wanted to find a college team, and you could tell he always wanted to he wanted one, but couldn't really find it until that trip to Washington. And it spoke to him, and it fed into what he likes. So and I like you, watching the upsets is great, but if you can kind of go out there and do a little research and you find something that really speaks to you, and that's whatever sport, right? Like I don't have any affinity to the Toronto Raptors. I really don't care, but Portland, Dame Lillard, I like that story. So I've kind of been a bit of a Portland guy now, you know what I mean? It's one of those things. So, and times change, players leave and organizations become different, but I think you could really kind of go out and find teams, especially nowadays, that speak to the individual, watching them and paying for them. And if I'm going to give my attention, I want to give it to something that, it's a back and forth type of thing.
Is that how you came across your fandom with the Buffalo Bills?
Yep. I was young, and they kept losing those damn Super Bowls, right? And they'd be on in the household. We'd watch them. Bills would lose, and I was a young kid, and I like drawing sports logos back then. So I draw like the Super Bowl, and I draw the Bills, and I hated the Dallas Cowboys. Just I don't know why. I didn't like that star. I didn't like that they were good all the time. I never liked good teams, like because I was a Rough Rider fan, because they always so like, I hate the Cowboys, and so I grew up like hating the Cowboys and loved the Bills logo, loved the uniforms, and just I was like, and they were lovable losers. So I just I attached onto that, and that's my little love relationship with the Bills.
Would you ever consider body slamming through a folding table, or?
I would. I used to do myself and three buddies in high school. We did it was called HBW, Hardcore Backyard Wrestling. We had 2 video cameras, we had a cast of characters, intro music, and we walk around our neighborhood fighting in we'd break into like a school and fight during like school hours, and kids would be there like, like janitor and teachers would come in, what are you doing here? You're gonna. But it was like EC, like it was hardcore wrestling. It was like late 90s, or like we were like, so I jumped off, like I took a guitar to the face. I've jumped off rooftops, like, so I jumped through a table ain't no thing to me. This modern Bills fandom, this Bills Mafia stuff, I'm not like, I just kind of sit there. You kids enjoy it, I just sit back. I'm not. It's all very new, all this jumping through tables and Bills Mafia side. I'm not really into that stuff per se, but if offered, yeah, why not? I've done it before. I know the form. Let's just put it that way.
Body's taking a few nicks, but patch it up and do what you can to keep it going. So
yeah, form is important. You got to know what you're doing, right? You got to take that fall good.
So I'd presume then that you're probably wrestling had a big influence on your childhood sports experience.
Like most guys in radio, and I work with a few at the station, they're still hardcore wrestling fans, and I've kind of dropped out because I grew up. But yes, certainly like the Attitude Era, WCW, Monday Night Wars, like EC. I loved ECW, but the sports entertainment, that like cutting a good promo, right? Like having a character, all that stuff just bleeds right into radio and right into that entertainment side of it. So yeah, I mean, looking back, you can kind of you can draw a pretty straight line from that interest to where I am now and how that kind of pairs. But yeah, dude, like Stone Cold, DX, all that stuff, NWO, like my brother and I, like that was can't miss stuff in our household. Like, and then we're performing the moves, and yeah, that was, and I know AEW's taken off. My brother still watches that, and a lot of people are fans of that. And I just, it's not for me, but those era of wrestling, and I know everybody has their own eras of wrestling, Stampede days or whatever, but that Attitude Era, man, holy, most fireworks came on, like Raw's Warner, and oh, spine, your hair is standing up. Yeah.
I know that there's a little bit of a gap between us in terms of age, but when I grew up as a kid, I owned a Sega Dreamcast. And one of the games that I remember, this was way back in the day when DVD rentals and you could still, rent some VHS tapes. And I remember going to the store that sold Dreamcast games new and buying WWE Attitude. Like I just recognized Stone Cold and was like, oh, I'm going to buy this. And I had no clue what to expect. And my brothers and I thought it was so funny just because wrestling can sometimes be goofy, but like, it wasn't until I got a little older that I realized like that era that I grew up in as a kid, like that Attitude Era of wrestling is like, so it's like, maybe it's not the most influential because obviously boomers are going to come in and argue what happened before or people say afterwards, but like, you can see it with Pat McAfee's at WrestleMania, but like who's there at 60 years old and who's getting stunned at 80 years old? Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? Like their influence on wrestling can never be understated. Even if you think the era that came before was bigger or when there was more Canadians involved, when my mom was growing up in like the 70s and 80s, but that Attitude Era definitely resonates with wrestling fans. And I think will for a lot longer than any other era of wrestling.
Yeah. It's like, it's pop, it's chips. It's like, it's your whole, all those signs in the stands. Like you're right. It was at a time too, in like North America, like everything just hit. It seemed like it was a good time for all of that. You had a bit of a counterculture spin, the whole suck it stuff. Like we were doing suck it's on the plate. Like it was just like, you felt a little rebellious. It was just kind of, and wrestling at the time was so like boring. It was getting real boring, and that just kind of sparked it right up. But I love the Dreamcast drop. That NFL, Dreamcast made the best, I think, graphics-wise NFL games.
You talk about NFL 2K 1 and 2?
NFL 2K, and I don't know if it was easy to play or not. I don't remember. I know GameCube also, their sports graphics were really good at that time. But Dreamcast, that would have dropped. My buddy had a Dreamcast. The stuff is wild.
I mean, I like still got my Dreamcast kicking around. Got a Sega Genesis a few years ago because I grew up, went to my uncle's house when we were kids, and he's like, "Oh, you guys want to play this video game?" We played Mortal Kombat 2 on Sega Genesis, and that still to this day is probably my favorite video game ever. Just there's no influence like a 4-year-old playing a fighting game for the first time from the 90s. Let's just say
we were a Genesis household. There was no Nintendo in our house. It was strictly Sega Genesis, Sonic, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. You name it. It was always Genesis. Yeah. And we had Sega Channel. My brother went Sega Channel for a month. Do you remember that thing? And they'd come by, they hooked it up to your cable. And basically what you did is they would drop games on this. You'd go on this thing and it'd be like a drop box and you could just play any game you want. Cutting edge stuff at the time. Wild. I
mean, even Dreamcast, like people love online gaming now, but if you don't love Dreamcast at its plugging the Ethernet cable into the back of your system and using Sega Internet, then don't love me at my PS5 and Xbox S and blah, 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 all this stuff.
Exactly. We'll be old. We'll be so old telling little kids about this stuff, and when they won't know what the hell we're talking about.
When people say to me, yeah, man, I got 2K. I'm like, no. You have 2K22. I have NBA 2K, 2K1, and 2K2.
Yeah.
So don't talk to me about, you want to go run 2K? Like, which one? Because I got the first 3 that had Allen Iverson, or the first NFL 2Ks, NHL 2K. Like, they're like Dreamcast. It's so unfortunate that they came at a time when Sega was just crapping out a bunch of random consoles. Some hit, some didn't. And also the unfortunate mistake of them opting to not make DVDs playable because they thought they would be too expensive, and PS2 opted, and then it was curtains. But yeah, that my brother got it. Yeah, my brother got it on his birthday, his 7th birthday in 2000, and that changed my life forever. Like I know that people love the modern systems, and I can always appreciate better graphics.
Yeah,
but there's nothing like, you know, being able to, you could burn as many games as you want because they're all under 1 gig.
that's right.
Pop it in, you play Crazy Taxi, Dreamcast, Final Fantasy, Sonic Adventure. Like, oh man, there were so many great games, and it was a system that was truly ahead of its time, which is why I think I still love
Oh
it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. The Trailblazer.
Like, what were some of your favorite games on Sega Genesis?
General Chaos, which is extremely rare. You got 5 army commandos, and you're pitted up on a screen, and it's kind of an overhead view, and you tactically position them. It is one of the best games I've ever played. Extremely hard to find. Micro Machines was another fun one where you drive around little micro machines like the bathtub or a breakfast table or whatever. Super fun. The NHL games, obviously, the Madden games were whack. I mean, my buddy and I would play those all the time. You get hurt, and the ambulance would drive out in the field and run over a bunch of players, and Madden would be on there, same bunch of weird stuff. The Sonics were great. As I mentioned, the Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat was awesome. What else was for Sega? Yeah, that Sega channel was just great because you'd rip through so many games, you just couldn't even remember them. But yeah, Sega, no Nintendo. You go to a buddy's house, they have Nintendo. I just be like, this is kind of boring. Mario was okay, but all the other games kind of to me fell flat. It was Genesis, baby. I remember there's that commercial. I think Nintendo had that little crappy van, and then you had Sega Genesis in this sports car, and they'd race down the road, and Genesis wins. Yeah, no, great games. My brother still has that console. I'd take that. I like playing video games the odd time. Now I'll play FIFA or like some of those Tom Clancy games on the Xbox, but I'll take a Sega any day of the week, man.
Did you ever play NFL Blitz?
Yep. Did you ever play also Mutant League Hockey was like another kind of variation of that. It was a hockey thing where you're a bunch of aliens and you'd get into a fight and vaporize the guy through the ice. Like, it was just crazy stuff, but much of the same like Blitz, where you're kind of like, this isn't real.
I used to think as a kid when I first saw they used to have demos like the Dreamcast demo CD, and they would show you previews of games to go and buy them. And I remember seeing the one for NFL Blitz, and I was like, is this game like rated M? Like, this looks so bad. And then when I actually ended up playing it a few years ago for the first time in my life, I'm like, oh, this is basically just a regular a characterized football game, but just taking off penalties.
It's like wrestling and stuff. The NBA games too, NBA Jam and NBA Hang Time were both great basketball games, like legendary basketball games.
Yeah, NBA Jam, like, I know that people have the updated versions, and the first time they rebooted it was on PSP, but like there will be nothing like the original one on Sega Genesis. So you can't replace it.
Yeah, it was great. It was just good enough. Nothing bad about it. Graphics were great. The He's on Fire. I mean, that's you say He's on Fire, and everybody kind of knows where you're coming from there. So yeah, that's good stuff. What a trip down memory lane. I want to go buy out the Sega Genesis right now. I might go out and find one maybe.
Well, if you're next time you're in Regina, you're more than welcome to come over, and I have 2 controllers, so you're more than welcome to play NBA Jam till our eyes bleed, because I got lots of time. So
hell yeah.
So, Lieutenant, we're getting towards the end of our time in today's episode. I'd love to ask you a few more fun questions before we part for today.
Sure.
If you had the opportunity to meet any celebrity who is Canadian, who would it be and why?
Right now, well, I always wanted to meet John Candy, but I can't because he's not alive, unfortunately. He'd be my answer all the time. And then right now, I wouldn't mind picking the brain of one Ryan Reynolds just to see how his whole acquisition of Wrexham has gone over. I'm watching the show on what is it, on HBO? I can't remember, but him and McElhenney there from Always Sunny purchased the soccer team in Wales, and I think he's a pretty interesting fellow. But I'd like to know how that's going behind the camera. That recency, it's a tough question. I'm sure there'd be other people, but right now Ryan Reynolds just pops up because he is Canadian, and that whole Wrexham thing. I know what we're shown on the show is one thing, but I'd really like to see the nuts and bolts of how that day-to-day operation goes when you're a Canadian movie star buying a Welsh soccer team. Like that's quite the quite the fantasy novel there. So yeah, I'd probably meet him and pick his brain about that type of thing.
I think that's also probably just influenced from watching Ted Lasso, to be honest, because there's not many people outside of the UK that have the appreciation for the very nitty gritty of lower level,
Right.
English football teams.
I've never seen a minute of that Ted Lasso show. I don't really want to be honest with you. Is it good? Like, it's just a play. It's a right. Like, it's a kind of a, what would you call it? A satire of,
Yeah. I've never seen it either. I just know that people love it and go crazy.
Yeah.
But I as a kid, when I loved soccer, the Premier League was popular. So then I, the sports nerd I can be at times, loved going down the rabbit hole of like playing soccer games on the internet that would like, you start a career mode and work your way up from Division 4 to Division 1.
Yes.
So that's how I heard of all those teams that people say, oh man, like this low level team. It's like Wrexham, Plymouth, Morecambe, blah, blah, blah. Like, so
even
I have an
that's whenever I play FIFA, man, I never be Liverpool. I always be somebody from the bottom of that's the fun of the game. And then you play your way up, and I love that.
Who is the guest that you are the most proud of getting on your show in your entire time working there?
I've talked to a lot of weird, funny people and somewhat famous. I guess, did I get him? I don't know. I was gonna get Archie Manning on the show once. I don't know how I got his phone number. I got his office. I don't think he joined us. Gotten Quadri Ishmael a couple of times. Covers the Ravens. I mean, as far as going out there and getting some wild people, those are usually somewhat provided to us. And I just kind of go through the like, to me, being a nerd of like people who cover sports and knowing like people who cover sports in like weird American markets, to me it's something, but to other people it may not be as prominent. So over the years, we usually go down and do a lot of NFL previews. I'll go to different markets and talk to people that cover the team there and people that I follow. So to me, it's a big deal. I know them quite well. But as far as like big gets, like we've had Gretzky on the show a few times. We got a lot of American, but they're all just, it's not like I go out and get them. So it's not like I've hunted them down or anything. But in terms of just that, I guess every NFL season, prior to the NFL season, we do try to hit every team and preview them. And there's a few media members down there that for me, it's something special because I've been following their careers for such a long time that it's pretty cool for me to phone them or text them and say, hey, you want to join us? And they say yes, and it's all good. So again, a few former players down there that also know about the CFL or have spent time in the CFL, so you can kind of talk to them about that. I'm just trying to think too. There's a Rolodex of just names I'm cycling, and I can't. Man, we've had some weird people on. Warren Cromartie came on the show one time, like former Expo, and he joined. I was producing for a different show and a different host, but he's a huge Expos fan. So when I got Warren Cromartie on, and Warren was just so happy to be on, and he was just such this big life guy. And so I still have a few clips that I run of his that were just hilarious that I use as like a bit with this host. But yeah, we've had like weird wrestlers on in the past. Like just, I can't really specify a number one, but I would just say like few media people that I follow in the States, like big media names, whether they're like local reporters or national guys. I always get a big kick of bringing those guys on. That usually require pay, but we don't have to pay them. So that's a big one.
What is an unpopular opinion you have about sports that you are willing to die on the hill for?
It's a waste of our time. It's a giant waste of our time. Sports is one thing to be like, it in a sense, it takes your mind off of pressing things in life, which is good. We all need a break from time to time. But I think, and again, looking in today's hyperness of making money in the world and everybody competing, it's really taken on this different theme where it's taking too much of our time, I think, away from other issues that I won't get into here. I just, growing up to me and living where I did and being raised how I was, sports to me was cheering for your home team. And that's pretty much it. And you pay the money in exchange for the service. Whereas now it's seen as a big money-making thing and you're a customer, and it's a little, you've ripped the soul out of it for me, where people, I hear it all the time. Why would I go to a CFL game? NFL, that's better. Well, you go because you're here. I mean, I go to FC Edmonton games. It's not the quality of Liverpool, but
No,
I'm
of course
here
not.
and they're the club here. So why would I not go and support them? If I don't support them, they're gone. If you don't support the Elks, they're gone. If you don't support, so all these things, we all want to watch the best all the time, and that's fine. But you got to understand that if everything around you then gets taken away, you're not going to see anything else, and you have to then pay. I mean, I can't go on an NFL trip every year. That's not in my. Some people like to do that, and that's fine. But you can't tell me that's easier than paying a couple bucks to go watch your local team out in the thing, even though the quality maybe isn't there. So I just think sports now has taken off, and it's really become this big money making thing where we all have to love this and we can't love that because it's lesser quality. Whereas sports is just supposed to be a go out with your dad or your mom and go to the ballpark and have a good time, eat a hot dog, and cheer on the home team. So I just think, yeah, my unpopular opinion is it's sports right now, and with fantasy, all the money behind that, and people continuously like my host does like 5,000 mock drafts in the month of August alone. Like, and that's his thing. But I just think, yeah, to your question, there, especially nowadays, I think we have so many other pressing issues in the world where we've used sports as that thing that takes us away from those. But now I think it's almost consuming so much, we don't have a lot of oxygen left for other things in life.
So then my final question to you is, if you were to work any job in the world that you wanted that had nothing to do with sports and money's not really an issue, what would it be and why?
I'd like to be out like doing like a nature show or something, like being out like animals and stuff, just away from like because sport, you're people and it's flashing, like everything's very live. And I think to counter that, even in my own personal time, I just like to flip on a nature show and just chill out and kind of, that type of stuff, just going out in the world. I like to work, something with animals, documenting, maybe something like that. Other than that, yeah, just being, you know what I mean? Being, watching it. I love watching animals because they just don't know any better, and their behavior is just always just so. Something like that where you go out and film or document or really get away and get out there. That would be, if again, money wasn't an issue and everything else. Yeah, that would be that'd be something neat to do that I don't think a lot of people have the opportunity to.
That's a great way for us to wrap today. Lieutenant Eric, I want to thank you so much for having been on today's show. It was very insightful and a pleasure to get to chat and get to know more about yourself, being a guy who works behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. And I honestly appreciate the perspective of understanding the importance that sports should play in life and that it shouldn't overconsume us or become all about money instead of like you said. I really resonate with that message of making sure that you still support local, because everyone loves supporting local with every other business. But when it comes to sports, why does that have to go out the window? Like,
bang on, man. Absolutely. No, thanks for having me. That's very kind. And anytime, man, hit me back and we can do this again. Love it.
And thank you to the listener for enjoying today's episode with the producer and co-host of the Dustin Nielsen Show, Lieutenant Eric.